Again, Deuteronomy 8, verse 2, you shall remember the whole way that Yahweh your God has led you. In the name of Christ. Once upon a time, in a land not far away, there lived an evil monster whose name I dare not say. This ogre was a monster, yet this fairy tale is true. This type of monster threatens us. It feeds on me and you. Oh, this monster wasn't ugly as monsters usually are. This monster wasn't big or green. He didn't have a scar. Yet horrid was this creature, for he brought an evil plague. He made the people sick and weak. They couldn't lift a leg. So children, if you're listening, this story you might scare. This monster might give nightmares or frighten out your hair. Once upon a time, in a land not too far gone, there lived an evil monster of whom I sing this song. The stories start as stories do, with a king so strong and fair. He ruled o'er his kingdom, his riches he did share. The people were so happy, they loved their king so pure. They'd be with him forever, and that they thought for sure. They saw how he provided, how he walked with them each day. He gave to them a garden and animals to play. Yes, he asked of them a tribute, so small yet large it was. He asked that they would thank him by keeping all his laws. And for a time they did so, and everything was great. But then the monster reared his head of sin and greed and hate. The monster told the people about some other king. This ruler asked no tribute or any other thing. In fact, he lied. The new king's better. He'll give you what you want. That lie, it fooled the people. Its trick would always haunt. And yet the people fell for it. They still do so today. This monster had great power to lead the folks astray. His words were spells. They had great might and magic they could cast. His lies could dupe the strongest man. The smartest would not last. And the monster had so many, a spell, a hex, a charm. They all had one main purpose: to kill and hurt and harm. He'd tell the people they had missed another king or two, and sure enough they'd follow, and he'd cook them in his stew. You see, most his spells were subtle. The people didn't know that he'd tricked them with his magic, and to his hell they'd go. He'd say, "Oh yes, your king's a good one. Obey him some, that's fine. But look for other treasure outside the kingdom's line." Or, said the monster to the land, "Enjoy from height to breadth, but don't thank the king for everything. It won't result in death." Or times would come when the monster worked a hexing even worse. He said their king was no king at all, and empty was his purse. "Look," he roared, "there's problems, death, and evil in the land. Your king cannot be in control, for where's his hand?" Oh yes, this monster was a scourge, the worst as monsters go. His teeth devoured, his claws were sharp, an awesome, mighty foe. He stole the people from their king without an outward fight. He simply changed them inwardly, destroyed their thankful sight, and death it caused. Because the king alone real life could make, apart from him, the monster's friends had hell alone to take. Once upon a time, in a land that's fairly near, a monster prowled the kingdom and struck a heart of fear. But the story is not over. For once upon a time, the king who ruled this kingdom gave more for me to rhyme. He said the monster's evil was not the story's end. He'd send a monster killer into the beast he'd rend. The kingly plan was simple, yet wise and full of love. He'd send the monster's killer from his castle home above. He'd kill the monster, but not by hurting the people whom he tore. The king would do the opposite. He'd help the people more. He'd give them his most precious gift. They'd surely thank him new. He'd give the prince his only son, a savior, strong and true. The king would let the monster eat this princely heir, his son. In short, he'd let his own dear child take all that should be done to each and every person who walked the monster's way. This son would feel the torment of the monster's sad decay. The king made it a promise. He sealed it with his ring. He placed it in his book of hope around the land to bring. And sure enough, it happened. The prince came from his throne. He fell upon the monster like a heavy, crushing stone. Oh, the monster seemed to beat him on a hill called Calvary. But the prince emerged victorious as days passed. 1, 2, 3. The monster was defeated. The prince and people lived. His loving reacceptance, the king his land did give. He said, "I know you left me, the monster's charms you ate, but I will readmit you to my kingdom, good and great. I don't ask any payment. You're in as soon you ask. The price for all your errors, my son has done this task. I just want you to love me. The tribute I demand is once again to thank me as you live within my land. I know the evil monster might tempt you as you sank, so one more gift I'll give you to help you always thank. This book of hope will tell your heart the gift of my son's life. The words herein will point you when the monster says, "What strife?" The story here will point you when the monster says, "What king?" to all the words I've done for you and all the gifts I bring. This book's words are much stronger than the monster's evil spells. For this book of truth, life comes from it. Real hope, it always tells. If there is a temptation to take my gifts for naught, my wondrous words will turn you to the war my prince has fought, and here you'll always see me, your real king, your real father. No matter what the monster says, no different king's a bother. In good times or in bad times, remember my provision. Remember I'm the real king in moments of decision. You'll have my love forever, my peace and hope and pardon. I'll walk with you again each day. Someday give back that garden. And even if the monster roars, you know things aren't that scary. Just trust and thank, and I'll be there. Your every burden carry. That's why the king desired thanks. Just thanks, and nothing more. He knew that thanks in word and deed show people know the score. They know and trust in only him. It shows their hearts are bound. The king, his kingdom ne'er to part, a joy they'd always sound. Yes, once upon a time, in a land not far away, a king destroyed a monster and the evils of his way. So where is this king and kingdom? I hear you softly coo. Could he be here among us now, his people, me and you? Well, this isn't just a fairy tale, a clever poem or rhyme. I said before, this story's true. The once upon a time is this day, now, and every day. As you give your thanks above, it shows you want him as your king. Your joy is all his love. So, once upon a time, in a land that's here and now, the king destroyed the monster. And this people's thanks show how. And we sing.